I thought I had a pretty solid life. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Samantha for over 6 years. We were that couple everyone envied. We met in college, fell head over heels, and after a whirlwind romance, tied the knot. On the surface, everything looked perfect. I had a decent job in marketing, and Samantha was a rising star in her field, working as a public relations manager. We had our own little house, a comfortable life, and friends who often remarked on how well we complemented each other. But beneath that glossy exterior, things were starting to fray. It started with little things. Samantha began coming home later from work. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just caught up in late meetings or working on a big project. She was ambitious, after all. But then I noticed the texts on her phone. They were innocuous at first, quick messages from her coworkers. But as time went on, the frequency of her late nights increased, and she started getting defensive if I asked about her schedule. "You're being paranoid, Jake," she'd say, brushing me off with a wave of her hand. Sometimes I'd catch her texting, and her face would light up with this smile I hadn't seen in a long time. It was the kind of smile that felt like a punch to the gut. I pushed those feelings aside, telling myself I was being unreasonable. Maybe I was just anxious about work, and it was seeping into my personal life. But intuition has a way of gnawing at you, doesn't it? The pivotal moment came one Saturday night when I decided to surprise her. I took our favorite takeout home and planned a cozy evening. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked out front. The sight was unsettling but easily brushed off at first. Maybe it was a friend's car, but the unease turned to dread as I entered the house. The door was slightly ajar, and the sounds coming from the living room froze me in my tracks. Laughter. And then came the unmistakable sound, moaning. My heart raced. I remember standing there, clutching the takeout bag so tight that it nearly crumpled in my hands. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. I crept closer, and when I peeked around the corner, my stomach dropped. There she was, my wife, tangled up with a man I recognized, a local nightclub owner named Mark. The way they were wrapped around each other felt like a scene straight out of a bad movie. I couldn't breathe. In that moment, my world shattered. The validation of all my insecurities rushed in like a tidal wave. I stumbled back outside, the takeout forgot. I sat in my car, shaking. How could this be happening? My mind raced with questions. How long? Was it just him? Did she hate me that much? I spent what felt like hours parked in that driveway, replaying the scene in my mind. I had to confront her. I had to face the woman I thought I knew. But the idea of walking back into that house made my skin crawl. I couldn't just walk away from this. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. When she finally came to bed that night, blissfully unaware of my presence, I was caught between my shock and my anger. How could I confront her? Would she lie again? Would she try to cover up this betrayal like it was just another casual mistake? It was time to come face to face with the truth, and I needed a plan. I wasn't just going to let this slide. The thought of revenge began to simmer in my mind, and I knew I had to act. But how? I had never been the type to seek revenge. I had always believed in forgiveness. But this was different. I felt betrayed on levels I couldn't comprehend, and I was determined to make sure she felt the weight of her choices. Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of a journey I never asked for, but now I was fully committed to taking back control. The next few days were an emotional roller coaster. I had gone from disbelief to fury to heartbreak, all in the span of a week. I couldn't look at Samantha without seeing her with Mark. Every laugh, every smile felt tainted. Yet I had to keep my composure. I didn't want her to suspect that I knew. It felt like I was living in a twisted reality show where I was both the audience and the unwilling participant. Samantha kept her routine, which only fueled the fire in my gut. She still came home late, still texted at odd hours, and still smiled at me as if nothing had changed. I played along, desperately trying to keep my cool while plotting my next move. It was hard to focus on work. I found myself daydreaming about the confrontation, rehearsing every line in my head. But deep down, I knew that confrontation alone wouldn't be enough. I needed revenge. One night, after Samantha left for yet another supposed work event, I grabbed my laptop and started digging into Mark. I wanted to know everything about this guy who had invaded my life. A quick search revealed he was a well-known figure in the local nightlife scene, running the hottest club in town. It didn't take long to discover that he had a reputation for being a womanizer. That only added to my anger. Not only had my wife cheated, but she had given herself to a man who treated women like disposable playthings. The next step was clear. I decided I would open my own nightclub, a place that would not only rival his but would also serve as a reminder of his betrayal. I had a business background and, while I had never considered starting my own venture, it felt like the perfect way to reclaim my power. I wanted to create a space that was vibrant, welcoming, and most importantly, better than his. I spent hours researching everything related to starting a nightclub, the best locations, potential partners, and the ins and outs of liquor licensing. I knew I had to get this right. It wasn't just about the club, it was about making Samantha see the consequences of her choices. I wanted to banish her from this new life I was building. It felt like a twisted form of justice, a way to ensure she would never be able to step into a place that I created. In the following weeks, I secured a space downtown that was perfect for my vision. It was a bit rundown, but it had potential, the kind of place I could transform into something extraordinary. I poured my savings into the renovation, working late nights and weekends. I hired a talented designer who understood my vision, and together we began to breathe new life into the place. I kept Samantha out of the loop, telling her I was taking on a side project. For work, I watched her grow more suspicious, especially when I would get calls or texts late at night about the club. She often questioned me, her eyes narrowing in that familiar, judgmental way that made my blood boil. But I played innocent, deflecting her questions with vague answers and half-truths. As the club began to take shape, I made sure to keep tabs on Mark. I would visit his club under the guise of wanting to check out the competition. It was a surreal experience. Seeing him interact with patrons, always charming and overly flirtatious, made me want to rip his throat out. But I kept my cool, blending in with the crowd while planning my next move. The emotional toll was immense, but I was fueled by a fire I had never felt before. Each night I spent working on my club felt like a step towards reclaiming my identity. I was no longer just the husband betrayed. I was a man on a mission. I wanted to show Samantha that I was not someone to be trifled with. As I continued to work on the club, I started to formulate a plan for how I would unveil it. I wanted it to be an event, a party to launch the new establishment. But more than that, I wanted Samantha to be there. I wanted her to see everything she had lost and to feel the weight of her choices bearing down on her. By the time the grand opening approached, I had created a name for my club that would resonate. I called it The Revenge, a nod to the journey I had taken to get there. I knew it would be the talk of the town, especially when I orchestrated the perfect moment for Samantha to walk into my trap. The night of the opening was electric. The club glowed with vibrant colors and the music pulsed through the air. I was nervous but excited. Everything I had worked for was finally coming to fruition. And Samantha, she had no idea what was coming her way. As I stood at the entrance, watching the crowd pour in, I felt a rush of satisfaction. This was not just a club, it was my triumph, a testament to my resilience. I was ready to show her the consequences of her betrayal, and I was determined to make sure she would never forget it. The grand opening of The Revenge was something I had dreamed about and meticulously planned down to the last detail. As the night unfolded, I saw the fruits of my labor come to life. The atmosphere was electric, with pulsating house music and a crowd that was buzzing with excitement. I had hired an incredible DJ who packed the dance floor, and the cocktails were flowing. People were enjoying themselves, and I felt a sense of pride swell in my chest. This was my creation, my sanctuary. As I moved through the crowd, I kept my eyes peeled for Samantha. I wanted her to arrive, and I had made sure to send her an invitation, feigning casualness about the event. I had hinted at how big it was going to be, with a few friends in town and a unique surprise in store. She had always loved the nightlife, so I figured she would be curious enough to show up. Finally, I spotted her. She walked in with a couple of friends, her eyes wide with surprise as they took in the vibrant decor and lively atmosphere. She looked beautiful, but there was a tension in her face that I hadn't seen before. I had to remind myself to breathe. This was the moment I had been waiting for. As she moved deeper into the club, I decided it was time to approach her. I made my way through the throng of people, heart racing. I wanted to see her reaction, to witness the realization wash over her as she understood the significance of this place. "Jake, wow, this is incredible," she exclaimed, her voice barely audible over the music. I could see the genuine surprise in her eyes mixed with a bit of confusion. "You've really outdone yourself." "Thanks, Samantha. I appreciate that. I wanted to create something special." I nodded, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Glad you could make it." As the night progressed, I watched her interact with our friends, her laughter ringing out, but I could see the underlying tension. There was an unease in her demeanor, as if she was grappling with something she couldn't quite put her finger on. At one point, I caught her stepping away from the main area, phone in hand, texting someone. I felt a surge of anger as I recognized the pattern. Was she reaching out to Mark? There was still so much I didn't know about their relationship. Had they been meeting up behind my back even after everything? I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my plans. I was going to confront her, but not just yet. I needed her to experience the full impact of this night. After a while, I decided to make an announcement. I grabbed the microphone and stepped onto the makeshift stage, feeling the energy shift as people turned their attention to me. "Hey, everyone. Thank you all for coming to the grand opening of The Revenge. I'm thrilled to see so many familiar faces here tonight." The crowd clapped and cheered. "I'd like to take a moment to thank someone very special who has been a part of my journey. Samantha, you're here tonight, and I want to acknowledge that this club is not just a reflection of my work. It's a testament to the choices we all make in life. Some choices lead us down a path of love and support, while others, well, they lead to betrayal." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Gasps filled the room, and I could see Samantha's expression change as she realized what I was implying. The laughter faded, replaced by an uncomfortable tension. "Tonight, I've created a space for people to come together, to celebrate the good and to recognize that sometimes we must face the consequences of our actions. So, I invite all of you to enjoy this space and remember that every action has a reaction. Thank you." With that, I stepped off the stage, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had not only made my point but also set the stage for a confrontation. I could see Samantha's face flush with anger and confusion as she tried to process my words. As the night wore on, I noticed her fuming, her friends whispering in the corner. I could tell they were trying to convince her to leave, but she wouldn't budge. She was determined to confront me, and I couldn't wait. When she finally stormed up to me, her eyes were blazing. "What the hell was that, Jake? Are you serious?" "Just being honest, Samantha. I thought you might appreciate the theme of the night," I replied coolly, trying to maintain my composure. "Theme? You think this is funny? You think it's okay to air our dirty laundry like that?" She shot back, her voice low but furious. I could feel the tension between us crackling in the air. "You want to talk about dirty laundry? How about we talk about your late nights and the man you've been seeing?" Her face went pale for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being paranoid, Jake. This is ridiculous." "Am I? You think I haven't seen the way you've acted lately? The lies you've told. I saw you with him, Samantha. I know what's been going on." Her expression shifted from anger to disbelief. "You saw me with who? Jake, I don't know what you think you saw, but you're mistaken." "No, I'm not mistaken. I'm done with the lies, and tonight I wanted you to understand what it feels like to be on the other side of betrayal," I said, my voice steady. "Is this some kind of sick joke to you?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. "It's not a joke, Samantha. It's reality. And now you're going to live with it," I said, feeling a wave of satisfaction wash over me. The confrontation was exhilarating, and in that moment I knew that I had taken back control. This was my club, my life, and I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I had finally stepped out of the shadows of my betrayal and into the light of my own power. And as much as it hurt to confront the truth, I was ready to face whatever came next. The night continued, but the initial buzz had shifted. I watched Samantha retreat to the bar, a mixture of confusion and anger on her face. The night was far from over, and I had more plans in store for her. This was just the beginning. As the night wore on, I could see Samantha struggling to regain her composure. She moved through the crowd, her laughter replaced by an edge of tension that cut through the atmosphere. I watched her interact with our friends, but it was like she was a balloon slowly deflating, her vibrant energy dissipating with every passing moment. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. This was not how I had wanted our lives to unfold, but it was also the reality we now faced. I kept my distance, allowing her to stew in her own emotions. The club was packed, and I needed to ensure everything was running smoothly, but in the back of my mind I was acutely aware of her presence. I could see her trying to laugh it off, but her eyes told a different story. They darted around the room, searching for something or maybe someone. I knew she was looking for Mark. Eventually, I decided it was time to confront her again, but this time I would do it in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. I had spent far too long feeling like a bystander in my own life. I wanted her to know that I was no longer passive. This was my time to take charge, and I intended to make it count. I waited until I saw her slip outside for a breath of fresh air, and with a deep breath, I followed her, pushing through the throng of people still dancing inside. The cool night air hit me like a wave as I stepped out, finding her on the patio staring out into the street. Her back was to me and I could see her shoulders tense as I approached. "Samantha," I said, softening my voice, "we need to talk." She turned to face me, her expression conflicted. "What do you want Jake to gloat to rub this in my face?" "No," I said firmly. "I want to understand. I want to know why. Why him? Why this? Why now?" Her eyes flashed with something, anger, defiance, maybe even regret. "You think you know everything, don't you? You don't understand a thing about what I've been through, about what I need. What you need, or what you want," I countered, my voice rising, "because it sounds like a selfish choice to me. You've made your bed, Samantha, and now you're lying in it. Don't act like you're Mr. Perfect. You've been distant for months." She shot back, and the raw, bitter words stung. "You've been so caught up in your damn job that I felt like I was living with a ghost." "Being distant doesn't justify cheating," I retorted, my anger simmering. "You could have talked to me. You could have communicated instead of running to another man. Says the guy who never pays attention." She yelled, her voice shaky. I felt alone. How could you expect me to stay patient forever? I felt the frustration boiling over and took a step closer, needing her to see the hurt behind my anger. "You think that justifies what you did? I was working hard for us, for our future, and you threw it all away for a few nights of pleasure." Samantha looked away, her expression softening for just a moment. "It wasn't just that. I thought I was being supportive, but I felt trapped. Mark made me feel alive again." "Alive?" I scoffed. "You think a fling makes you feel alive? You're running from what we built together, Samantha. We had something real and you threw it away." "Maybe I wanted something different," she shot back, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Maybe I wanted to feel free again." "Free? You're running from commitment, from the love we had. You think this is freedom. This is just a way to escape reality," I said, my voice steady even as my heart raced. "And now you're here at my club seeing what I've built for myself. How does that feel?" Her gaze dropped to the ground, and for a moment I thought I could see the realization dawning on her. "It's complicated," she finally admitted, her voice quieter now. "I didn't think you would go this far. Why didn't you think I would? You pushed me to this point. I had to take control back to show you what you were missing," I said, my voice firm but laced with a hint of vulnerability. "But I want you to know, Samantha, this isn't just about revenge. It's about understanding what you've lost." She looked up at me and I could see a sheen of tears in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jake. I really didn't. I thought I could make it work with Mark." But her voice trailed off and I could see the internal struggle she was facing. "Did you ever think about how this would affect us? About how it would affect me?" I pressed, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "You made a choice and now you have to live with the consequences." "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "I know I messed up and I'm sorry. I thought I could find happiness elsewhere, but I was wrong." In that moment I saw the cracks in her facade. The guilt and remorse were there, but I wasn't sure if it was enough to rebuild what we once had. So what now? You think saying sorry makes everything better? I asked, my heart racing. No, I don't. I need to be honest with you. I don't know if I can go back to how things were, she admitted, her vulnerability palpable. But I want a chance to try. I want to make things right. I could feel a swell of conflicting emotions. My heart wanted to believe her, to give her another chance, but my mind replayed the betrayal over and over again. You need to understand, Samantha, it's not just a matter of trying. There's trust that needs rebuilding, and that takes time. I get that, she said, her voice steady now. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. Standing there, I realized that this was the turning point. I could choose to dwell in the pain of betrayal, or I could look ahead and see if there was a path forward. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let her walk all over me again. Let's take it one day at a time, I said, my voice firm but softer now. You need to earn back my trust, and it won't happen overnight. She nodded, her expression serious. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, Jake, I promise. And with that, we stood in silence, the reality of our fractured relationship hanging heavily in the air. The club pulsed behind us, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil we were both feeling. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time, I felt like we were both ready to face it together. Or at least, I hoped we were. As I turned back to the crowd, I knew that while the night had started as an act of revenge, it had transformed into something far more complex. It was a chance to rebuild, but only if both of us were willing to put in the work. I was ready, but would she be? Time would tell, but I was determined to find out. As the days turned into weeks after the grand opening of the Revenge, I found myself trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. Samantha and I had decided to take things slowly, but it was easier said than done. The aftermath of her betrayal still loomed large over both of us. While I wanted to believe her promise of change, doubt kept creeping into my mind. Samantha was making an effort, that much was clear. She was more present and engaged, frequently checking in with me throughout the day. But the guilt that weighed on her was palpable. I could see it in the way she hesitated before speaking, as if every word could shatter the fragile truce we were trying to maintain. I, too, was trying to navigate this new territory. I had poured my heart and soul into the club, and it had become a sanctuary for me, a place where I could channel my energy away from the heartbreak. But every time I stepped inside, I was reminded of our confrontation on the patio. It was a constant reminder of what had transpired and of the thin line we were now walking. One Saturday night, after a particularly busy shift, I found myself at the bar, pouring myself a drink. I needed to unwind, and the energy of the club was intoxicating. As I scanned the crowd, I noticed Samantha laughing with a group of friends in the corner. It was a comforting sight, but my heart still ached. Suddenly, I caught sight of Mark at the back of the room. He was lingering, leaning against the wall, watching Samantha with a smirk that made my blood boil. It was as if he had come to claim what he thought was his. Anger surged through me, and I felt a familiar impulse rise, one that I had been trying to suppress since opening the club. I decided then and there that I couldn't let this go. I couldn't be the husband who allowed his wife's past mistakes to haunt him. I needed to confront Mark, not just for me, but for Samantha. She needed to see who he really was and what he represented. I stormed over to him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mark," I said, my voice low but steady, "we need to talk." He looked up, feigning innocence. "Jake, fancy seeing you here," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "What's up? What's up? You think you can just show up here and act like you didn't do anything wrong?" I challenged, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You violated something sacred, and now you're just watching, waiting for your next chance." He chuckled, leaning back against the wall, clearly unfazed. "Come on, man, it was just a fling. You know how these things go. You can't own her, Jake. She gets to make her own choices." "Choices, is that what you call it? You think it's a choice to betray someone who loved you?" I felt the tension in my body coiling tighter. "You think this is a game? Let's not pretend you're innocent here. Your marriage was already on shaky ground," he replied, his tone dismissive. "Samantha was just looking for something more exciting, something you weren't providing." That hit hard. I wanted to throw a punch to silence him with my anger, but I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm within. She deserves better than you, Mark. I spat, unable to contain my rage. You're nothing but a narcissist who preys on vulnerable women. He raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering across his face. And what are you, Jake? A man too wrapped up in his own head to see what's happening in front of him. You're the one who let her slip away. I felt my fists clench at my sides, but before I could respond, I saw Samantha approaching, her expression shifting from joy to concern as she sensed the tension between us. Jake, what's going on? She asked, her voice anxious, glancing between us. Just having a little chat with your friend, I said through gritted teeth, trying to keep my cool. You should know what he really thinks about you. About me? What did he say? She asked, narrowing her eyes at Mark, who shrugged nonchalantly. Just the usual, Samantha. You know how it is. I'm just the guy who brings excitement into your life, right? He replied, a smirk dancing on his lips. Excitement, is that what you think this is? She shot back, anger flashing in her eyes. You think you can waltz back into my life and act like nothing happened? Calm down, babe. We're just having a chat, he said, dismissing her irritation. You really think you can go back to the way things were? You wanted something new, remember? The tension in the air thickened as Samantha's gaze shifted between Mark and me. This is ridiculous. You're both acting like children. Mark, you need to leave. I don't want you here, she declared, her voice firm. I don't need to take orders from you, he sneered, but I could see the annoyance creeping into his expression. Maybe not, but you're not welcome in my life anymore, she responded, her voice steady. I made a mistake and I'm working on it, but you, she pointed a finger at him, you need to leave. Mark hesitated for a moment, clearly stunned by her words. Finally, he pushed off the wall and leaned closer to her. You'll come crawling back. They always do, he said, his voice low and dangerous before turning and walking away. Samantha turned to me, her expression conflicted. I didn't want it to be like this, Jake. I never meant for him to come here. Then why didn't you tell me he was still around? I asked, frustration bubbling to the surface again. I can't keep defending you if you're not going to be honest with me. I didn't think he'd come here. I thought I was done with him. She exclaimed, her voice tinged with desperation. This is my fault and I'm trying to fix it. But I can't keep looking over my shoulder if I don't know what's happening. I took a deep breath, the anger starting to subside as I saw the fear in her eyes. I want to believe you, I really do, but you need to understand that rebuilding trust takes time. I know, she replied, her voice softer now. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just need you to be honest with me, too. If you're feeling uncertain, please tell me. We can't fix this if we're hiding things from each other. The weight of her words settled over me like a blanket. I nodded, my heart heavy. You're right, it's just hard for me to let go of the past. I can't pretend it didn't happen. Samantha stepped closer, her expression earnest. Neither can I, but I want to try. I want us to work through this together, even if it's difficult. Her sincerity cut through the remnants of anger I felt. I realized then that despite everything, I still cared for her deeply. Okay, I said, my voice steadier. Let's take it one day at a time. We stood there, the remnants of the confrontation fading away, while the pulsating atmosphere of the revenge surrounded us. It wouldn't be easy, but we were both willing to confront our past and work toward healing. It was a fragile truce, but it was a start. In that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. It would take time, but maybe we could rebuild. I was ready to fight for our future, but I needed to trust that she was too. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship, one step at a time. And somehow, I believed we could emerge stronger for it. The following weeks were a mix of trials and triumphs as Samantha and I navigated the rocky waters of our relationship. It was like walking a tightrope, balancing the weight of our past with the hope for a better future. The revenge continued to thrive, and I immersed myself in the club's success. It became my sanctuary, a place where the thrill of the night masked the uncertainties of my personal life. Samantha put in the effort to be present, attending events at the club and interacting with patrons. The first time she stood behind the bar, pouring drinks and chatting with customers, I felt a pang of pride. It was a step towards rebuilding our connection, and I could see she was genuinely trying. One night, after a particularly busy shift, we found ourselves sitting together in a quiet corner of the club, the sounds of laughter and music filling the air. I watched her as she talked about her day, her eyes sparkling with excitement. It was a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with, and for a moment I felt the weight of our past lift. Jake, I know I messed up, but I want to show you that I'm committed to making this work, she said, her voice earnest as she reached for my hand. I've been seeing a therapist and we're working through my issues. I want to be the partner you deserve. Her honesty struck a chord within me and I squeezed her hand gently. I appreciate that, Samantha. I've also been trying to work on myself to communicate better and be more present. I don't want to be the reason we drift apart again. As the weeks turned into months, we continued to rebuild our relationship, brick by brick. We faced challenges. Sometimes I would catch myself slipping into old habits of doubt and suspicion. Other times, Samantha would regress, the guilt creeping back into her demeanor. But we were learning to communicate, to share our feelings openly without resorting to blame or anger. There were moments when the shadows of betrayal threatened to overtake us. I would see Mark at the club from time to time, always lingering at the edges, but I had grown increasingly resolute. I was no longer the passive husband. I wasn't going to let his presence affect me or our relationship. Instead, I focused on the life we were building together. One night, as I was wrapping up another successful evening at the Revenge, I took a moment to step outside for some fresh air. I looked across the street and saw Mark leaning against another building, watching the club. I felt the familiar surge of anger rise within me but quickly reminded myself of how far I had come. This time, I wouldn't let him dictate my emotions. Samantha joined me a moment later, sensing the tension in the air. "Jake, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, just thinking about everything. I want us to keep moving forward. I won't let him overshadow our progress." She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me. It was comforting, and I felt the warmth of her embrace seep into my bones. "You're stronger than you think. We're in this together, remember. I'm not going anywhere." That reassurance grounded me. I know, and I'm grateful for that. "I want to be a better husband and partner for you, but it's a process." "It is, but we'll figure it out. I promise," she said, her voice steady. As we stood there, enveloped in each other's arms, I realized that the journey to rebuild trust was ongoing. The scars of betrayal still lingered, but they were beginning to fade. I could see a path ahead, one where we could forge a new beginning stronger than before. As time went on, we established new traditions: date nights, weekend getaways, and even collaborating on events at the club. Laughter filled our home again, and while the past wasn't forgotten, it was no longer a shadow over our relationship. Instead, it became a lesson, one that taught us the importance of communication, understanding, and resilience. The club became a symbol of our growth. It wasn't just a business. It was a place where we could both thrive and express ourselves. We created an environment that was welcoming, vibrant, and reflective of the hard work we put into our relationship. Occasionally, I would see Mark at other clubs in town, but it didn't sting as it once had. I knew I had moved on. I had taken the power back into my hands, and I felt a sense of pride in what I had accomplished, both in my personal life and professionally. Reflecting on everything we had been through, I learned that love isn't just about perfection. It's about growth, forgiveness, and the willingness to fight for what truly matters. Life threw us curveballs, but together we learned to navigate the chaos. If I could offer advice to anyone facing a similar situation, it would be this: trust is fragile, and once broken, it takes effort to rebuild. But with honesty, communication, and a willingness to work through the pain, it's possible to emerge stronger. It's not an easy journey, and there will always be challenges, but if you're committed to each other, you can create a future filled with love and understanding. And as I looked around the Revenge, filled with laughter and music, I knew that this was just the beginning of our new story, one built on resilience, trust, and a renewed sense of hope.